Okay, well, Natalie, just being mindful of everyone's time, I will just start with a welcome before we hand over to you. So, welcome everyone. Good afternoon and good morning. I don't know if anyone based in the US is joining us today with a slightly collapsed time difference, but if you are, good morning and welcome. I'm Lindsay Walker, Head of Operations and Strategy at British American Business in London. We are so pleased to be partnering with our member My Expat Taxes to offer this session on filing expat taxes in 2021 and how to get stimulus updates. As a transatlantic community, this is a topic that affects many of us, including myself, very much. And between the limits in movement that may have ended up having us spending time in places longer than we expected, the process for stimulus checks, and the change that we're now seeing in administrations, this is an important time to go through changes to be aware of and make sure we're putting ourselves in the best position to claim support, be organized, and be in good tax standing as expats or those of us who are expat adjacent. A few housekeeping points before I hand over to Natalie. There will be time to address any questions that you want to ask following her presentation on the updates. So please use either the chat or the Q&A function to submit them, and she and I will pick them up. We're also recording this webinar and we'll be sharing that through the BAB LinkedIn and Twitter profiles. So if you aren't already, please do connect with us there. And of course, if you would like to explore the My Expat Taxes blog resources, they've got a fantastic set of terminology and common things that expats should know. You can set up an account or just have a look at all their content. That's on myexpattaxes.com. And so I want to introduce the creator of My Expat Taxes, who will be helping us with all of this useful information today, Natalie Goldstein. So Natalie hails from California originally, and she was inspired to create My Expat Taxes by her own experience of the gap in the market for a cost-effective, do-it-yourself with support where you need it, tax software suitable for expats. So it just didn't exist. So it's pretty cool that she made it. It's a really fantastic story. She's now based in Vienna, so slightly to the side of our usual UK-US transatlantic locales. But of course, she works with many expats in the UK and has spent significant time here. So thank you from BAB, Natalie, for being here, and I will hand over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Great. Let's just jump into it. Why am I talking to you today? I mean, Lindsay did a great job of introducing me. But again, I'm from California, now based in Vienna. When, it's not in lockdown, I'm usually in London probably once a month, I would say. I pretty much call it my second home, but enough about that. Background is in finance and information technology. I specialize in US expat taxation, and I am an enrolled agent with the IRS. I created My Expat Taxes, which is now the leading US expat tax software, trusted by thousands of expats worldwide. We actually have a very big community of expats in the UK, as Lindsay mentioned. And let's jump right into it. What are we going to talk about today on this short lunch break? So everything on stimulus payments, honestly, it's crazy right now, right? You see it, there's a change almost every day. So we are just going to go about all the changes that have been happening since last year, how you can claim your stimulus payments if you haven't claimed it. I know things get busy. Obviously when you're an expat, you forget to file returns, or you don't have time, or you don't even know you have to file US tax returns. And what happens if you file it this year? What kind of refund will you be getting in place of the stimulus payments? And what are the new tax season changes? Do you even need to file? What are the filing deadlines? So really just kind of basic 101 things. So before we get into that, as you consider about using different tax firms or softwares for your own US expat taxes, look no further than My Expat Taxes. Like I said, we are award-winning US expat tax software. You can e-file as 15 minutes. But as you're sitting there thinking, my situation is too complicated for a tax software, I challenge you to take a look at it. We have support for foreign corporations. We have support for PFIPs. We have tax treaties in there. We really have looked into making the best expat tax software for expats because we only focus on expats. So with that being said, stimulus payments. All right, what is the last update? Actually, it's already changed since I had my last webinar. It already got Biden's signature. So third round has been signed and is going to the presses. Now, key things for you to know as an expat: are you eligible as an American abroad? Yes, you are. So you, again, might not have been filing taxes, or you just haven't been keeping too much tabs. I mean, a lot of stuff is happening in the UK as well. But as an American abroad or a US green card holder abroad, if you have a valid social security number, you are eligible. You don't need to be working in the US, paying US taxes in order to get the stimulus payments. Now, if you want to talk to the IRS about the stimulus payments, or you want to inquire about your payments, just keep in mind that the stimulus payments is what the media normally refers to it as. It's actually called, by official terms, the economic impact payment or the recovery rebate credit. I mean, now there's the American Rescue Plan, so they're adding more terminology, but I would say these are the main things to talk about if you actually call the IRS. Now, stimulus payments are there for every eligible American or lawful resident if they meet the eligibility requirements, which we'll go through. So quickly, first round would have been $1,200 per taxpayer, plus $500 per qualifying child under 17. The second round was less than that. It was at $600 per taxpayer, $600 per qualifying child under 17, which was pretty disappointing, I have to say. That was in December of 2020. And now the third round has, bumped up the stakes. So it's now at $1,400 per taxpayer plus $1,400 per qualifying dependent any age. Now, if you're thinking, hey, I didn't get payment 1 or 2, and now there's already a third round, I've missed out on so much. You haven't missed out on anything. You are still eligible to claim these. Even if you didn't get them back in 2020, you can get them now. But we'll get into that. What do you need? You need a valid social security number, and you cannot be dependent of another filer. So this is more for maybe younger filers out there. In case you just finished studying or something like that, just make sure that you're not claimed as dependent on another US tax return, or if someone else is financially supporting you. Now, again, this is for a US tax return. If you're claimed as dependent on a UK tax return, that does not matter for the stimulus payments. So eligibility rules, it's 3 checks. First check, valid social security number. If you have one, then you pass the first one. Now, keep in mind, if you are married to a non-US citizen and they do not have a social security number and you file jointly with them, that does not disqualify you. When the first round came out, that did disqualify you for the stimulus payments, but they have changed that since then. So if you didn't get your first stimulus payment because you were married filing jointly to someone with an ITIN, and you're thinking, darn, I missed out, don't worry. If you file your tax return for 2020, you should get back any of those missing payments. Now, the next part is, like I said, can you be claimed as dependent? So if you're not claimed as dependent on another US tax return, you're in the clear. And the last eligibility check is income thresholds. So of course, this is more of a financial aid, financial support during these crazy times that we're in. So if you're a high earner, you're probably not going to get the full stimulus payment, or maybe you actually get zero. But if you don't have any income, even if you, like I said, have zero income, zero taxes, you're unemployed, you're still eligible for these payments. So now the question begs is, how do you get the payments? You do have to file a 2020 tax return. So if you were around for the craziness of last year, the IRS had actually opened up a non-filer portal where you could put in your information, put in your bank account if you had one, and your address, and the IRS would mail you a check, right? Or they would direct deposit in a US bank account. They closed that portal. So now if you haven't claimed the stimulus payments, but you need to claim them, you will have to file a 2020 tax return. So how do you actually get the recovery rebate credit? So if you're using My Expat taxes, we make it very easy. We ask you, how much did you get for stimulus payment round 1 and 2? If you're using another tax software, make sure that they ask you those same questions, or using another tax firm, right? Like I said, they should be asking you these questions. You would then complete your 2020 taxes to calculate your adjusted gross income for eligibility. So the screenshot I have is actually the worksheet for the recovery rebate credit. For anyone that is doing their taxes themselves, first off, kudos to you, right? Second of all, you can go ahead and look for those instructions in the new 1040 instructions for this year. Now, like I said, there are income thresholds. So if you're married filing jointly or qualifying widower, the threshold is 150,000 US dollars. If you're head of household, so say that you are married to a non-US citizen, but you are the primary caretaker in your home financially, you might qualify as head of household. If you have a qualifying dependent, that income threshold is 112,500. And if you are single or married filing separately because you're married, say, to a non-US citizen and you don't want to include them on your return, it would be 75,000 US dollars. For some of you, you may be sitting here thinking, well, I definitely earned over that amount, so I guess no stimulus payments for me. I will say, as an expat, there's actually a very easy way to reduce your adjusted gross income. So here's an example. You make $100,000 in the UK equivalent of USD as salary. You then apply the foreign earned income exclusion, which will subtract your 100,000 US dollars salary from your adjusted gross income. Now you have a zero adjusted gross income, and now you're eligible for the full stimulus payments. If that's moral, I'm not going to comment on that. We're just here to make sure you have the best tax return possible as an expat, and letting you know that even if you think that you're too much of a high earner and you don't qualify for the stimulus payments, that might not be the case after applying some of the deductions you have as an expat. Regardless, if you do qualify, you will automatically see the stimulus payments as a refund on your tax return. So the screenshot I have is the 1040, right? That's like the cover sheet to the IRS about, what is your income, deductions, and refund at the end. You will directly see a refund for the recovery rebate credit. That will be, like I said, direct deposit to you if you have a US bank account, or sent to you as a paper check if you don't. And I will tell you, having a paper check sent to the UK is not fun. So if you can get a US bank account, I would recommend one for your taxes if you want to claim the stimulus payments quickly. Keep in mind, your 2020 taxes is just for round 1 and round 2, right? Round 3, which is coming right now, that is nothing to do with your 2020 refund. That's going to be sent to you after the IRS has your information. They know you're eligible. So if you had filed a 2019 return and you were eligible and the IRS has that information, but you didn't file, your 2020 yet, maybe you'd even get the third one before you get the first and second. But regardless, I would recommend, if you haven't filed yet, definitely go and file so the IRS has your information so they can make the refunds. Timeline of payments, right? There's 2 buckets of people, right? We are the regular filers, right? If you're the regular filer, you should have already gotten your stimulus payment if you were eligible. It would have come last year. The payments are automatic. You don't really need to do anything different unless you have less income in 2020, and therefore you would actually be eligible for more of the stimulus payments. You have a new dependent in your family. So say you had a child in 2020 and you just got them a social security number, you can back claim those credits for them on your 2020 tax return. Or say that, that example I gave, you were married to a non-US citizen, filed jointly with them, they had an ITIN and you didn't get your payments, you could file a 2020 tax return still to get your missing payments. So that's kind of the bucket of regular filers. Now, obviously, there are the filers that are late filers or you've never filed. So it's okay. First of all, I'll say that. Don't stress too much if you haven't been filing, right? I'll get into it, but there are programs for you. Number 1 is just get on top of it now. There's more time, I would say, that we have now to do our taxes. So if you haven't filed, go ahead and go through and file any late taxes that you have. Do try to e-file 2020. If you e-file 2020, the IRS is just going to get your information a lot faster. If you paper mail your tax return, it's going to be sitting in a pile of paperwork for the IRS to process, and you probably won't see any stimulus payments for a very long time. So anyways, that's kind of the timeline of payments over here. Why do you have to file your taxes? I think that's the age-old question that I get asked all the time. And I like to at least joke that it's the cost of a US passport. I mean, maybe it is. You can just open up your US passport. I'm sure it hasn't gotten too much action in the past few months. Open it up, dust it off, look into the back section. Do you see that screenshot I have on the screen? That's there, right? So everyone that has a US passport, technically the IRS has told you that you need to file taxes being abroad as an expat, right? It's there. Whether or not we read our passport, that's a different question, but the information is there, right? They definitely make it clear that you should be filing taxes if you're abroad, if you meet the filing requirements. So what are the filing requirements? Well, the filing requirements are on the screen. I won't go through them. It depends on your age, what your filing status is, but essentially the main things to note is this is your gross income. So say that you don't have a single dollar in the US, you only have UK income, you have a UK salary, UK investment income, UK pension, nothing of the US at all. I'm sorry to say that's still included in your gross income. So when you're calculating that, you have to calculate all of your worldwide income from all sources. So even if you don't have a single dollar in the US, you don't travel to the US at all, you are just living abroad, you're in the UK, you only have UK income, that is still counted towards your filing requirement. The filing requirements do change every single year. So, keep that in mind. It's usually in line with your standard deduction, except if you're married filing separately. So again, the situation where you're married to a non-US citizen, you don't want to include them on your tax return because why would they want to be included? And you'd have to report them to the IRS as well. That filing threshold is $5. So that's not a typo on the screen. They had changed that with the 2018 tax reform. They never changed it back. So if you're married filing separately, you have to file a tax return if you earn $5. I know, it's crazy. Now, on top of that, say that during this pandemic, you had some different hobbies, not even hobbies, but let's say you started making some additional income, right? You looked for different income streams and you started doing some freelancing self-employment roles. Now, if that counts as self-employment income, keep in mind that regardless of the filing thresholds on the screen, you would still have to file a US tax return if you have more than $400 in net self-employment profit. That's because the US is looking to see if you have to pay self-employment tax, which is 15.3% of your self-employment net profit. That's a social security tax, not necessarily income. As someone in the UK, if you are self-employed in the UK, you're registered as self-employed, you're paying into the social security system in the UK, you shouldn't have to worry about any US self-employment tax because there is a totalization treaty, but you still have to file your US taxes. I think that comes to the next point of you probably have to file US expat taxes if you are working and earning money abroad. Do you have to pay US expat taxes? Probably not. Most expats end up not paying anything to the US unless, for some reason there's a gap between what you pay in the UK. So a couple examples here where you actually would owe income tax to the UK is say, you sold your residence that was not taxable in the UK and it's the profit that you have is over any exclusion you can take on US tax return. Yes, you would owe US income tax on, whatever the US would charge on that amount. Say you have ISA accounts, so they're tax-free, all that investment income. That investment income is definitely not tax-free in the US. So just keep that in mind. And that's another important point for those in the UK that if you have some type of tax advantage, I will say a different way, tax-free accounts, that's an easier way to say it. If you have tax-free accounts in the UK, doesn't mean it's tax-free in the US. So as you are planning out your financial situation, keep in mind that you do pay tax to two different countries. So just because something sounds good in the UK doesn't mean it's necessarily sounds good in the US and vice versa. Filing deadlines. Now I talked about why you have to file taxes, when do you have to file taxes? And I think it's kind of exciting. You probably don't think it's exciting, but the IRS just again extended the deadline. So it's usually April 15th. Everyone knows this deadline. If you watch TV in the US, if you watch any US TV shows, April 15th is just this date that everyone knows about. Now, last year they had extended the filing deadline to July 15th. This year, I guess they thought that was a little too much again. So they said, okay, it's the second year in the pandemic. We're only going to extend it to May 17th. Don't ask me why, but they literally just extended that, I think, yesterday or, last night that it was announced. So now that is the new filing deadline and payment for US taxes. Now, keep in mind, as an expat, you always have a 2-month filing extension. Now, what's not clear is if you have 2 months from April 15th, which is what it normally is, that would be June 15th for you, or if you have 2 months from May 17th. So the IRS has not cleared that up. If you look at their website, it still says 2-month automatic extension from the regular due date of April 15th. So I would just say, let's stick with June 15th to be safe. Anyways, you can still file a filing extension by May 17th to get an extension to October 15th. Why would you want to do that? Well, 2 reasons. One, the UK tax year is not the same as the US tax year. The US tax year is from January 1st to December 31st. You obviously have a different tax year. But when you report your US taxes, you have to report it to the US tax year. So you might be waiting for some additional tax documents for the UK so you can finish up your US tax return. Another reason, like I said, is say that you welcomed a new family member. in this past year and you're waiting to get them a social security number, that might be a reason to extend, because as long as you file with a dependent and they have their social security number by the time of your due date, including extensions, you can still claim them. So if you had a child in 2020, you did not get them a social security number yet, but you expect to get it very soon, you can still claim them on your 2020 tax return, and you would get the stimulus payments round 1 and round 2 for that child. You might also get the additional child tax credit, which a lot of US families don't know about, but a little bit of a spoiler, I will get into it more later, but if you have children that are under 17 with a valid social security number, you can be getting up to $1,400 every single year for them if you qualify and don't use the foreign earned income exclusion. Anyways, back to the slide. So if you have back taxes, obviously try to file them ASAP. If you're going under the streamlined procedure, which is an amnesty program, there is a bit more time and you're not necessarily charged late filing fees or penalties, but I would still say do it as soon as possible, because interest is always accruing from the date that the tax was owed. And if you're not going through the streamlined procedure, you just missed, say, 2018 and 2019. If there is tax due, there is late penalties due for filing and paying. So kind of cheat sheets for your US tax return. As you're doing it yourself, you're hiring someone to do it, you use My Expat Taxes, you probably want to know what's in your tax return, right? It's your financial information sent to the US. These are the main forms, 1040 and associated schedules. Like I said, if you're claiming the additional child tax credit, which is eligible for most UK families with children that have valid social security numbers under the age of 17, and you could claim up to $1,400 per child on Schedule 8812. If you're using the foreign earned income exclusion, which would disallow you from the additional child tax credit, but if you're using the foreign earned income exclusion, that would be Form 2555. Foreign tax credit would be on 1116. If you're claiming a tax treaty benefit, because the US and the UK, they do have a tax treaty together. So there are certain types of income that would be exempt based on where you are a resident, based on the payer. You might be using Form 8833 to claim tax treaty benefits. Also keeping in mind, if you have a UK pension, you're probably going to be claiming the tax treaty so that to ensure that your contributions and any benefits accrued in those pension accounts are not taxable in this current year. And then the famous FBAR and Form 8938, which are the forms in order to report your foreign financial accounts. But I do have a slide for that because people have a lot of questions. Expat tax benefits. Like I said, these are kind of the three main expat tax benefits. I would say that there are the foreign earned income exclusion, that excludes up to $107,600 of your foreign earned income. So like I said in the example with reducing your adjusted gross income, you have a 100K salary in the UK. You use the foreign earned income exclusion to subtract that 100K salary from your adjusted gross income. You have zero taxable income. That's it, no tax owed. So it's pretty easy to use if you're going to be doing your taxes yourself. I think Form 2555 is quite straightforward. Just keep in mind there's a couple limitations. You cannot claim the additional child tax credit. If you subtract all of your taxable compensation, so exclude all of your salary and your self-employment with foreign earned income exclusion, you don't have enough taxable income to contribute to your US IRA if you're doing that. If you want to revoke the foreign earned income exclusion, there's a 5-year waiting period. So again, it's one of those, if you don't need to start it, I wouldn't really recommend it, because once you do it, you're kind of stuck with it. Now, the foreign tax credit is the one I would recommend a lot, especially for people living in high income tax countries like the UK, that just uses income taxes paid abroad to offset US taxes owed. So say that you pay $10,000 of UK income tax. On your US tax return, you would owe $7,000. So you would just use that $10,000 you paid in the UK on your US tax return, and it would just, take credit for $7,000. That would be $7,000 tax minus $7,000 foreign tax credit equals zero taxes owed. Awesome. And now you have $3,000 tax or foreign tax credit to carry over into the next year. So with this, you can claim the additional child tax credit. If you're eligible in terms of adjusted gross income and other factors, you can also contribute to your US IRA because you have taxable income. And yeah, it's kind of the recommended approach because it's flexible, but it's difficult. It's a lot of math involved. 1116 can get a little bit messy. There's a lot of rules behind it, especially if you have investment income, and there is an alternative minimum tax version of it as well. Now, the third benefit is the tax treaty. Like I said, if you have certain types of income, say Social Security payments or a foreign pension with contributions, things like that, you might want to look at the tax treaty with the US. If you're sitting here thinking, how am I supposed to know which expat tax benefit to use? That's what My Expat Taxes does for you. You would literally enter in just your information. We would see, okay, what type of benefits going to reduce or going to result in the best refund or the lowest amount of taxes owed for you, and we'll apply it. If there's something that can be used with a tax treaty, we'll automatically put 8833 in there with the relevant reference to the UK-US tax treaty. So that's what My Expat Taxes does. But if you're looking to do your taxes yourself, these are kind of the three things you want to think about as you make a strategy, because there really is a strategy when you do your US taxes. FATCA, FBAR, foreign bank accounts. What do we do with that? Well, first off, FATCA, as you know, is the Foreign Account Tax Compliant Act. If you had opened up a bank account in the UK, I am very positive that they made you sign a lot of papers giving them your US Social Security number, telling them that you authorize the IRS to look into your accounts. That's because there's pretty much a double reporting requirement. Your UK financial institutions are reporting your information to the US Treasury because they're required to. But that's not the end of it. You also have to report it to the US Treasury and the IRS because that's just the way it is. If you have over $10,000 max combined in your foreign financial accounts, you're going to have to file the FBAR. That goes to the US Treasury. That does not go to the IRS. So do not include that in your tax return. You have to, submit it into the US Treasury's portal. That is due April 15th, but there's an extension to October 15th. That's automatic. So technically it's due October 15th, but we say April 15th because that's what it says. Anyways, Form 8938 is the other form. So that's essentially FBAR times 3, I would say, in terms of length. It just asks a lot more questions. It's asking for essentially the same amount of, or the same information. So what are your foreign accounts abroad? What type of accounts are they? What's the account number? What's the maximum value in them? Where are they located? Things like that. But you need to include this in your tax return if you're over the filing threshold, which starts at $200,000 on the last day of the tax year. So of course, there's different filing thresholds for different filing situations, but that is really Form 8938 that is included in your tax return and due at the same time as your tax return. How do you calculate your max is probably the next question, because those two forms I just put up there, it's not about your average balance. It's not necessarily always about your ending balance either. It's really about your maximum balance, right? So say you have 3 bank accounts, and this accounts for not just bank accounts. It can be pension accounts, it can be brokerage accounts, investment accounts, anything that is a foreign financial account. Say you have 3 bank accounts, 1 in the US, 2 in the UK. You ignore any US accounts. You only sum up the total in the foreign financial accounts. You would calculate the maximum, not the ending balance for all of these foreign accounts. So say, here's a good example. You have 1 bank account on January 1st in the UK. You put 4.5K pounds in it. Then you decide in March to open a second bank account. You open up that second bank account. You transfer the entire amount of bank account 1 into bank account 2. That's the same 4.5K, but now you have 2 maximum values in 2 different bank accounts. So you have to add those 2 together. So now that equals to 9K, translate that to USD. You're over the threshold. You have to file an FBAR, even though technically you only really had 4.5K floating around. So that's just the thing there, is that the FBAR is tricky. I always say, if you don't know if you need to file an FBAR, just file one. The penalties are pretty high. Not that I would say the IRS really enforces the penalties. They can at any moment, right? Don't get me wrong. But lately, I have not seen, letters going out auditing for FBARs, but it can happen at any moment. So definitely, if you think you have to file an FBAR, please do it just to protect yourself, because the penalties are so high for this form. And it's a lot of information, but there's no tax calculated. It's purely informational. Just what are your bank accounts? What is the maximum balance? Where are they located? And I'll give you a trick too. If you really cannot figure out the maximum balance in your accounts, on the FBAR, there is a checkbox that says you cannot calculate the maximum. I would not recommend using this for everything, but say you have a foreign pension account and you just don't know what the value is in there. If you cannot calculate the maximum, you can just say that on the FBAR. Keep in mind, if you have to file the FBAR, you have to report every single one of your foreign financial accounts. So not just the ones that went over the $10,000 threshold, but every single one, even if they have $0 in them, as long as your name's on it, you should be reporting it. That was essentially US expat taxes in 30 minutes, I think. I tried to go as fast as possible. Yeah, pretty much 30 minutes right there. I hope that that was a good overview and wasn't too scary. I will end with this. Again, if you're sitting there, you're nervous because you haven't filed your taxes, you haven't filed them for a while, you haven't ever filed them, don't be nervous. There are amnesty programs out there for expats that haven't filing. There are ways to catch up very quickly with back filings. If you do not owe tax, you normally don't have any penalties associated. If you do owe tax and you go through the streamlined procedure, those late filing penalties will be essentially eliminated. Just interest is applied. My Expat Taxes does allow you to go through the streamlined procedure through our platform. You can file back taxes. So that's the thing is, as you think about your tax situation is too complicated, you need to catch up on taxes. You have a lot of different types of income from different countries. I really built My Expat Taxes to try to cover 90% of expats there. So you can do the streamlined procedure in a day. You can file your back taxes in a day. If you're worried about your taxes, you want to get caught up, or you just need to file 2020 quickly to get the stimulus payments, look no further than My Expat Taxes. So I will end there. And
wow.
Yeah.
You've got a couple questions. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that was super impressive. And it was like 30 minutes of just great information. And as Charles commented in the chat, like really impressive slides as well. So thank you. I learned that. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a few in the Q&A, and I'll just chime in once you've gotten to go through those.
Sounds good. I will start just answering them. So the first one is, should expats expect any changes aside from Biden's and new administration, aside from stimulus checks? Do you anticipate complications for expats? So there are other changes, right? A couple changes besides stimulus payments is unemployment compensation up to $10,200 is non-taxable. Keep in mind that's US unemployment compensation. So say, if you got any of that or you moved in the middle of the year to the UK, that is one of the big changes. I'll tell you a story how crazy it is to have a change like that come in the middle of the tax season. My Expat Taxes, I am proud to say, was probably the first one to actually put in that new deduction in your tax return, just because, I actually code the tax engine myself. And that's why we can be really fast and efficient. But all the tax firms were just struggling to get in this new deduction. Aside from that, there's actually an increase in the child tax credit as well. That's really for your 2021 taxes. But like I said, if you're a US family and you have US children with social security numbers, you're living abroad, you could get up to $3,000 per child next year. And that can even be paid in advance. So complications wise, that's hard to say. I mean, with every new administration, when the last administration took over, it went crazy for any expat with a foreign corporation. So I can imagine it gets worse in terms of that foreign corporation stuff, but it could. I don't know yet. I don't anticipate anything. There are talks about residence-based taxation. I'm not sure if that's really going to come out soon, but we can all hope for it, right? Second question, are there any benefits to trying to file jointly with a non-US citizen spouse or partner? Not really. No, I can rephrase it. It depends. It always depends on your situation. I would say, okay, if you want a bigger standard deduction. So here's an example. You both have salary income under 100K. You could use the foreign earned income exclusion. You now have US investment income or some type of tax-free investment income from the UK of, let's say, 20,000 US dollars. You would subtract all of your salary with the foreign earned income exclusion, but now you have about $20,000 left of investment income with no foreign income tax. If you file jointly with a non-US citizen, you could get the standard deduction of $24,000. So that would net it out. Now I'm really getting into an edge case, but that is one benefit. Otherwise, I don't really see a big benefit. I mean, they're going to have an ITIN. They're not going to be eligible for any stimulus payments, but you would qualify for married for filing jointly, standard deductions and other filing thresholds. Third question, for people filing back taxes who may have changed jobs, with what paperwork on the UK side do they need to be prepared with to document that correctly? I think the bare minimum amount of paperwork is P60, so you at least kind of know what happened in the tax year. But let's be honest, your P60 is on a different tax year. So what you're going to have to do is try to calculate, okay, what percentage goes to January 1st of December 31st of that year for your US tax side. I always say just look at your monthly payment slips. You should have monthly monthly payment slips that will tell you how much you earned in gross income those months, how much tax was withheld. You might have to kind of fix your tax withheld with your P60, but definitely monthly payment slips will help you out. With My Expat Taxes, you can easily enter in different employers, different income streams that you have. So we just combine it all together. And what if you have UK inheritance or discretionary payments from a UK trust? What's the threshold before tax is calculated? Okay, so two things there. I mean, UK inheritance, first off, inheritance, there's not really a US inheritance federal tax. That's one, right? So inheritance, you may have to disclose if it's coming from, a foreign source as you have. Otherwise, there's not really tax on inheritance. Now, the other one is having a UK trust. So trusts are tricky. Revenue procedure, the new revenue procedure did eliminate a lot of foreign trust reporting, but I think your question's not really in that. That was eliminating foreign trust reporting for foreign retirement pensions, which usually are trusts. You probably have to file form 3520, and whether I know tax is calculated depends on, did you get distributions, how much income, things like that. But I will say with the UK trust, if you don't qualify for the exemption for 3520, you probably have a lot of filing to do. It can be a little bit messy, and there are high penalties involved for that one form itself. So definitely in your case, I would say just go jump on it, make sure you know what you have to file, and if you need an extension, make sure to file that extension. Premium bond winnings in the UK, where they are tax-free, do US citizens have to declare those in the US? Are they taxable as income in the US? That's the tough thing. Pretty much all income is taxable in the US, right? Unless you can benefit from the US UK tax treaty, so say Social Security benefits, right? That might be something that's not actually taxable in the US after the UK US tax treaty, but general investment income can be taxable. So if you have bond winnings, it is declarable, and if you don't pay tax, you might have to pay tax in the US if, for some reason you start getting taxable income. So say you're over the foreign income exclusion, or one way or the other. And can you get stimulus payments by just filing your US tax return, or do you need to do other forms at the same time? Just your US tax return. But I say that like it's easy. I mean, look at your US tax return, that can be like 50 pages long. So I think the IRS at least doesn't make you file an additional form, because just filing your US tax return can be like 50, honestly 50 to like 100 pages long. So you just need to file your US taxes. Honestly, you just kind of have to file for 2020. Obviously, if you haven't filed for your back years, you should do that because it's the law, but in order to get the stimulus payments, you just need to have a 2020 tax return on hand, so the IRS knows if you're eligible in terms of social security number, what your income was, and if you have certain dependents or if you were claimed as dependent. Now, does My Expat Taxes handle US expats in other countries than the UK? We have all the expats in the world on My Expat Taxes. Like I said, it's trusted by thousands of expats worldwide. The UK is a big base. We have a lot of people in Ireland. We also have expats all over in Asia, South America. It is really perfect for all expats out there. You can put your income in any currency. You can tell us whatever country you lived in. You can live in multiple countries. We just take in the information and produce your tax forms. I think I answered all the questions.
Yeah, I think so. And thank you to those who were flagging some other questions there. That was great. You're just a mine of knowledge, Natalie. And so fantastic that you're able to do that coding yourself. So I want to thank you again from BAB, myself, the team, and from our attendees. And thank you, attendees, for joining. I hope that you found all of this useful. And just to confirm, like we said in the chat, we will be sharing a follow-up for this event. So we'll have a recording of the webinar, but also Natalie's information with these slides and all the details that you would need. And I have to say, I was telling Natalie before we started, I've been in the UK for 8 years now. I've spent years haranguing the US accountants that my family in New Jersey uses to help me with my taxes. It's been a bit of a, it's all worked out fine, but it's always been a bit of a disaster. So I'm just very appreciative to have a tool that I feel like confident using as an expat myself. So it makes quite a big difference. And thank you for all those updates. I think we'll be will be interesting to see what happens as we move into this next administration. And at least this way, people can handle any changes, any updates that come with the stimulus and other packages. And hopefully it's motivated you all to be in good standing. So thank you again, and wishing everyone a great rest of the day.
All right, perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
All right,
Bye.
bye.